On this week's episode of Friend Code, we're talking about the recently announced Super NES Classic. Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Friend Code. I'm Michael Damiani, and today I am joined by two very special guests making their first appearance on Friend Code.
First timer,
Michael Huber.
Hello.
And Ben Moore.
Hello. We're wearing the same shirt.
We're employees.
We're employees.
It's a uniform.
I just noticed that.
Game Trailer's uniform.
Pretty cool. We should have done that for E3.
Yep.
No.
Probably you should have.
Walking the floor with all those nice blue shirts. Yeah.
Army.
Oh,
Yeah.
so nice.
Easy Allies Army.
Everyone could tell.
So generous.
Pretty
Okay.
cool. Just tiny bit of housekeeping, because I think there's a lot to talk about on this episode, and the last call questions are pretty much two themes for most of your questions for the last call segment. Gonna nix the Dear Nintendo part of this episode, so we're gonna go straight into talking about this week's subject, which is the Super Nintendo Classic.
Giving me anxiety.
This was rumored earlier this year. Eurogamer pretty much said it was gonna happen, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's why they're discontinuing the NES Classic, because they're moving on to the Super Nintendo Classic." But then no word about it, and then they just drop it out of nowhere. It's like not even 2 weeks after E3. Like, they didn't even announce this at E3. Like, we just had E3. Like, oh no, we don't need to announce it there. We're just gonna announce it. It's no news this week. Just drop it. I'm actually surprised they didn't save it for Comic-Con, but because that's when they announced the NES Classic last year. But real quick, let's go through the press release to get through the information, because there are some differences. It's not exactly the same case as the NES Classic. So it is going to launch in North America on September 29th for $79.99. So it's a little bit more expensive. Probably because it's coming with two controllers this time. I think they saw the problem with only releasing one controller with the NES Classic, how hard the controllers were even harder to find than the system itself. So, including that, but the biggest difference is it's coming with 21 games instead of 30 games. And the 21st game is kind of special. So the list of games that you will be getting if you are lucky enough to snag a Super Nintendo Classic will be Contra 3, The Alien Wars, Donkey Kong Country, Earthbound,
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 3. We need to clarify, because I actually
Classic.
saw a question. I'm not going to call a person out by name, but in our questions submitted for this episode, someone was upset that Final Fantasy 6 wasn't included with this. And,
Right.
and just for those of you who just don't know, because it's totally possible, the numbering system for Final Fantasy games back in the day were really wonky in North America. 3 is Final Fantasy 6.
I asked that question 20 minutes ago, Damiani. I was like, yo, 3 is 6, right? Like,
See, it's
confusing.
It's confusing.
For sure.
Just because they can't, for whatever reason, they can't call it Final Fantasy 6. Because that version was called Final. It's just weird. F-Zero. Good stuff there. 2 Kirby games. We're getting Superstar and Dream Course. The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Good classic there. Good sprites. Mega Man X. I'm
Yes.
really
Sounds
happy.
awesome.
I'm really happy about
this
this too.
needed to be on there. Secret of Mana.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Star Fox. Just skip over this next one for last. Street Fighter 2 Turbo Hyper Fighting. Super Castlevania 4.
Yeah.
It's my favorite Castlevania.
Super Ghouls and Ghosts. Some more frustrations there.
Yes.
Super Mario Kart. Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars.
Dance.
So another
with joy.
excuse. No more excuses. Another reason to try and play it. Super Mario World.
Of course.
Super Metroid, Super Punch-Out, and Yoshi's Island make the 20, but that 21st game, Star Fox 2.
What a cool thing to add.
Previously
Changes the
unreleased.
entire
Yep.
perception of the Super Nintendo Mini.
Yep.
It's like a must-own now.
It's must-own.
For anyone who, not just a Nintendo fan, but if you had any interest.
Collectors.
Historical significance.
Yeah, this is a big deal. This changes the entire makeup.
Yeah, that is insane. I will be shocked if that game does not get a separate virtual console release of some kind on some platform.
Maybe down the line. I look at like Modern Warfare Remastered. I know that's a special case because it was part of the collector's edition. But it took like a year even for that
be
to get a
standalone.
standalone.
Just a question, because sometimes Nintendo can be a little bit particular, and I realize that this is not the same case, but with the Ambassador program, I realized that was a reward for people that bought in early, but they never brought that stuff over. So do you think there's any chance that Nintendo would just limit this Star Fox 2 release?
I want to put it past them. This could be something that they're like, this is the only time I want to do it. There could be some behind-the-scenes things which are weird that we don't know about where this makes sense for them. The fact that it will be a limited run, that this will be the only chance to get it, and then they don't have to worry about it. They have to worry about keep releasing it and possibly updating it for future consoles. Like, nope. One and done. Two things to consider here with this. I mentioned first of all, the limited run. They did put out a statement to clarify. We'll get into this a little bit more in depth in a little bit, but they will be producing as more units throughout the calendar year till the end of 2017. No commitment beyond that, though. So that's interesting. And two, with Star Fox in particular, it never saw a virtual console release, and a lot of people speculated it had something to do with the FX chip and emulating it properly on the virtual console. So the Super Nintendo Classic might be the only reliable means that they can offer for you to play an official release.
Jeez.
Is that the coffee beeping?
Yeah.
It's scary. I thought like Nintendo was like, beep, don't.
You're too close.
Too close to the
We're
mark
too
there.
close.
We're watching you with our secret cams here. Yeah, that's never been proven. They never commented on that, but like
speculation.
That could be a thing. Like this might be the only way to play it. So combine those two things. That it has a previous unreleased game,
right?
Star Fox 2, and it's gonna be. Though they're saying they're producing more than the NES Classic, they're gonna try and avoid the NES Classic situation. They basically said we're only making them through this year, and that's it. And to add the third punctuation part to the whole point of this is going to be really hard to get, it's already sold out in Amazon UK, Game.uk sold out. Like, every site it's going up on in Europe and Australia, gone. And the US hasn't even started their pre-orders yet, which is going to be a disaster when that happens.
When I was frantically looking around yesterday, and correct me if I'm wrong, Damiani, there has been no communication about the pre-order situation or when they're going to open it up. Don't you find that lack of communication a little bit frustrating?
Yes.
For something that's so obviously desirable?
Yes. I do not. Like, Nintendo of Europe, hey, pre-orders start. Like, here are the territories. Yet, I think France was the last one that hasn't started yet. But Germany, all the other, pretty much every other country that everyone was expecting to do the pre-orders have done them. Australia has done them. I don't get why Nintendo has to be so secretive. I saw a tweet. I couldn't get a source on it yet. Someone replied to me about saying that I might have been an answer to an Amiibo question in the past. Nintendo apparently said a statement of like, the retailers, we aren't able to tell them how many they're going to get, or the retailer said we weren't told by Nintendo specific numbers of how many we're going to get, so we can't start pre-orders till we know that. So that's why we don't do the releases until as close, or pre-orders as close to launch as possible, because we don't know the inventory allotment. And if that's true, that sucks. But going to your point, Ben, yes, I don't get why it's like this cryptic, secretive, like, yo, it's like just gotta be at your computer every 15 minutes, refreshing those pre-order pages.
It builds the hype.
You might miss, it's like
it builds the hype.
It's insanity.
Putting Star Fox 2 on here makes me just truly believe Nintendo knows exactly what they're doing. You know? There's this air of why don't they ever do this? You know, for the longest time I've always been like, do they not know that they should just release, you know, X game or Y game, or do they not know that they should make extra of these Super Smash Brother GameCube adapters? It's like, no, they want that feverish demand. They want their thing hard to get, hard to track down, because it just makes it that much more valuable.
Yeah, it certainly seems calculating, but I think it's just hard sorting my own feelings on it, where I remember, like, talking to you guys on Slack saying, hey, we got to get this, we got to be on top of it, and there was that feeling of anxiety and anticipation. But at the same time, we haven't seen this thing fully play out, and I think that should be acknowledged. Maybe this won't be as much of a nightmare situation as I envisioned, but it's just going through this with the NES Classic and then initially going through this with Amiibo, it gets to a point where I very clearly want what Nintendo is selling, but based on how they're handling it, I'm not sure how I should feel, if I should just keep going for it in the exact same way that I go for it every time.
I know, it's kind of like limiting how hyped I can get, because it's a defense mechanism now.
Yeah, I think the defense mechanism is a good way to put it.
Yeah, I'm trying to be so cautious because I'm assuming I'm not going to be able to get one of these, you know? That is it's going to be harder to get than not. Never mind. I'm trying to word that. It's gonna be really hard to get. So the point is I'm trying to stay calm. I'm trying to keep my expectations in check.
But it's one of those situations, exactly like you said, where it seems so carefully calculated, and it seems like it's working for them.
Yeah.
I mean, the demand for the NES Classic hasn't really gone down, and as a business, them sort of creating that type of demand, regardless of the blowback that is present, regardless of the people that are feeling burned. It still seems to be a successful tactic. And so it's just, again, it's just a tough thing to sort out. There are a lot of feelings there, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to fault them when, or almost all of us are guilty of this, we get angry at the NES Classic situation. We get angry at the Amiibo situation. Right. But we're still the ones who are sitting there on Amazon and Best Buy.
Hitting
and GameStop,
F5.
Hitting that F5 key, like still having, like, clinging to that hope. We keep believing that maybe this is the time Nintendo learned. Maybe they made a surplus this time, and it won't be a nightmare to get. Maybe I won't have to like fear not getting one, or my only recourse is to go through scalpers on eBay or something like that and pay, you know, multiple times the price for that. Like NES Classic prices are still sitting at like between $300 and $400, I think, like probably closer to $300, and as you said, yeah, Ben, like people still want NES Classic. Like if they were to announce like, oh, new 1 million units being shipped to US, those would like sell out immediately, even with the SNES Classic coming out. And it's kind of, it makes me really think hard about the argument that sometimes you could say is BS or not. Like, does Nintendo know what they're doing, and are they doing this intentionally sometimes? In some cases, I don't think of all the time they're intending for this to happen, but because this has happened so much in recent times through Amiibo and NES Classic, it's two things. Is this calculated? Do they really know what they're doing? And they're just like master geniuses about that. And two, it's just like, is there ever going to be an end in sight for this? Like, is it just always going to be this way with them? And you can just never tell. And it's just, and like, are fans ever really going to like stand up and say no? Like, are consumers ever going to say no? Obviously they're not, because everything's selling out. So there's no recourse against like Nintendo for that. So they can just like say the right things, but behind the scenes be like, yeah, we know what you're doing. We know what we're doing. Like, it's all good here.
People are always going to want Nintendo products.
Yeah, but yeah.
I saw a question posed on Twitter. I think it was from Patrick Klepek, and I didn't necessarily believe in it, but I thought it was kind of an interesting thing to think about, where he's like, if they made an N64 version of this, he was just saying, like, for him personally speaking, he wouldn't be as excited. Like, there's something about the SNES library, that like sort of caliber of game, that sort of time when he played them, that hit like the right moment. And I agree. Like you say, Final Fantasy VI, that gets me excited. You say Super Mario World,
the Star Fox 2,
right? Star Fox 2, right? Like that is the 16-bit era of the Super Nintendo specifically is so fondly remembered. And obviously there are a ton of great things on the N64, but I think maybe it's a little bit more complicated. Like, could you put GoldenEye on that thing? Like, would they be able to do this trick again with something like the N64?
Yeah.
If that was the N64 Mini's version of the of Star Fox 2, where they came out and they were like, yo, 4-player GoldenEye online or something, like online capabilities for the first time ever.
About to burst your bubble. And I'm gonna do it real quick. So this was actually this was asked a lot, not a lot. Several of you asked about this for the last call question. What do you think about N64 Mini, like the possibilities of that? So we'll just jump into it right now.
Yeah.
So here's a few things. There's no way they're making they're including 4 controllers with that system.
2 though. 2 is a safe
probably
assumption.
2. I don't even know if they'll support 4 though. They should, but like that will be a nightmare to try and find 4 controllers with how in demand that's going to be. But you were talking about GoldenEye, and you were going like shooting for the skies there.
Of course, online.
And this kind of
Star Fox 2 has changed my perception of reality.
But the problem is Nintendo doesn't have the rights to that anymore.
For sure.
Microsoft has the rights to that, as well as Banjo-Kazooie and all those games. Because Activision has GoldenEye, Microsoft has all the Rare stuff.
With Miyamoto coming out and with Eves and, Spider-Man being in Marvel movies, the possibilities, Damiani, alliances are being formed.
It's not impossible. Microsoft has actually said they would be open to the possibility of that. Actually, both sides have. But here's the underlying thing that I think came out during the last time GoldenEye the rumors came about. Microsoft wants an equal thing or something better on their system if that were to happen. Like they also, if they were to allow GoldenEye to appear on N64 Mini, they would want the original N64 version of GoldenEye available on Xbox
Wait,
Live.
doesn't Activision have the rights to?
I'm sorry, Activision would want that as well.
But you're just saying some sort of equivalent exchange.
Yeah, but like for Banjo-Kazooie as well. Like,
sure.
Like they would want some kind of equivalent exchange. And Nintendo seems at the time, was very against that. Like, we're not giving our competitors, a leg up on us. Like, oh, cool, we get this, but you're getting the same version as well. And obviously, if you have online, the Activision would agree, but they're like, oh, we also have a deal with Microsoft. So, like, Microsoft's getting GoldenEye as well.
Then you got to factor in, like, James Bond, MGM, all the he's getting paid.
There's more of these issues seem to come up as you get more recent systems, and N64 is thanks to the first system you were going to really start to hit that where some of those games, like if you don't have GoldenEye, you don't have Banjo-Kazooie, you don't have like
Perfect Dark,
I mean, that's... like, or even Diddy Kong or Donkey, like they can get Donkey. I think Diddy Kong Racing and Donkey Kong 64, Nintendo could do because they own most of those characters and it's theirs. But yeah, no Banjo, no GoldenEye, no Perfect Dark.
Right.
That's a problem there.
That's synonymous with the N64.
Yeah, like that you're already starting with a bit of a problem there. Then you talk about the controllers.
The other problem that I wanted to bring up, though, I mean, you would obviously, of course, include Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on that theoretical thing, but the interesting argument is they did a re-release of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask on 3DS, updated versions of those games, and so if you were selling the N64 version back for a somewhat high price, does the fact that those remakes exist cheapen the value of them being on the N64 Classic?
I mean, I don't think so. I think giving people a way to play the original versions. I think the best thing about these is, especially N64, is just like having an official way to play these games through HDMI on an HD TV. So having the means and having an N64 controllers I think that's a really big deal if they do an N64 Classic.
Yeah, and it'd be
players who've only experienced it through Virtual Console with the Wii controllers, Wii Pro controllers, or Wii U Pro controller, any of those variations, finally get to actually play it with an N64 controller. I think that might be worth the price of admission to some people. Like, oh, I could see what the big deal was about this weird controller and stuff like that.
It sounds like a logistical nightmare, though, because like Super Smash Brothers 64 and games like that and games like Mario Party and even GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, like, you need 4 controllers for this.
Right.
That is so much of the magic of those games.
Is you have the first Nintendo controller where add-ons are a big deal. You have the Rumble Pack. You've got depending on the games that you've included, which is admittedly not that many of them, the memory card.
Yeah. I wonder if it'd be built-in memory and maybe a new N64
you would assume that they would probably just put all of that stuff in, but if you include Pokemon Stadium, does that mean you have like some sort of transfer pack
because you have to
thing?
do the transfer. I was talking about that with some people about when we were thinking about N64, like, what do you do about Pokemon Stadium? Like, I was like, you could just include every Pokemon and like several variations, and people are like, no, like the point of that game was to bring your own personal team over to it and fight. Doesn't matter if they make all of them available. They had Pokemon you can rent. But going back to your controller thing, I think another big point is going to be just the cost of making that controller.
Right.
Like Super Nintendo NES controllers aren't that complicated. Form factor and everything is pretty typical for that time and not very complex. That N64 controller is one of the most bizarrely designed controllers. So that can't be that cheap to remake, I assume, compared to the other one. So not only do I expect like if they do an N64 Mini to be like way more expensive than this is going to be $79.99 for SNES Classic. This thing's going to be like close to like $120, $150. They do that. Like you're getting like the price of like a 3DS or something for that. And is that really an impulse buy for some people? I don't know.
I think with the N64 Classic, now that they've included something like a Star Fox 2, it can't just be a collection of games anymore. There has to be sort of that gotcha, like, hey, this is a new thing that we're doing for this.
GoldenEye Online.
I think especially if they can't get the rare stuff, what would be a huge inclusion would be 64DD games. Yep. That would be the way to go.
Crazy.
And
adding on more. No, actually, no, you wouldn't, because they can do it internally. They could do a workaround for it. They wouldn't
internal Game Shark.
But like,
it was like a Game Shark.
But like, yeah. Like all those games we didn't get over here. You can import it, but like
and,
F-Zero.
Well, now it's extremely expensive to chase down anyway.
Yeah,
so.
it's only gone up in price to get all that. Talking about Earthbound already, Earthbound 64, like unreleased, getting that. All the Ocarina of Time, the side stuff, the Yura Zelda, and those weird quests that never got worked into it, but people could still find them. There's a whole treasure trove of stuff that probably didn't get released. Or
hopefully it's on somebody's hard drive somewhere.
And it could end up like that, but I mean, we'll have to see. But like, we have Super Nintendo Classic coming out in 3 months. That's such a short lead time, but that's like Nintendo's thing. We talked about the lineup of games, and we talked about like stuff we wished that we added N64 and stuff. Let's talk about some glaring omissions on the Super Nintendo Classic. And I think we're going to start with the most obvious one. It's getting the most attention. There is no Chrono Trigger on this list.
Hurts.
It not only does that hurt, but I said that it feels incomplete without Chrono Trigger, and I got multiple responses saying that game either like doesn't hold up, or it's all nostalgia, or like they made the right cut, and I just don't agree. I just don't agree.
See, I find it weird. We didn't really talk about this. But there's 21 games on this versus 30 on NES Classic.
But look at the hours of the games. You know, we're getting some meaty Super Nintendo games here.
You were defending it.
And that Star Fox 2, man, that counts as like 10 games.
I do think it's true in a way that they are, in a lot of ways, more elaborate than many of the things found on.
The other thing I gotta say though is like, I don't know if it'll be possible this time, but I mean, hackers hacked NES Classic.
Yeah.
We're able to put the entire... It's not a memory problem.
Right.
Nintendo is being very selective about what they're doing here. I think they easily could have fit 30 games on this, no problem.
Yeah.
And and they upped the price. I mean, that controller's not worth $30 more. So, but Star Fox 2...
That's Star Fox 2.
That's Star Fox 2 tax right there.
I think that controller's worth $30 for a brand new SNES, Damiani?
Maybe,
because you gotta factor in like scalping prices too. I wonder if that's honestly a factor of how they charge for this, because they know third party scalpers are selling those controllers for like $50.
If they really wanted to go after scalper market, this thing would cost like $199.
True,
because it's what end up. But I think that would kind of stymie the sales of this in the beginning. I think it only works the way it does because it's such a low impulse buy that people want it. It has such high demand that scalpers are able to then take advantage of that. The higher the price point they do, the counter scalpers, it also makes more and more consumers not want to jump on it either. So there's that point where they're going to risk like it's not going to sell out at all. In fact, we're going to like have units sitting on shelves at some point. I think finding that price point is a bit of a dance, and I think they don't want to waste the time on that. So I think they just marginally increased it this time based on some data they had from NES Classic, where it's still an impulse buy, but obviously it's still going to resell for like $200-300 minimum on like eBay.
It's interesting, and this is going to sound, I think, a bit silly at first, because like imagine if you had this SNES Classic or even the NES Classic, and you said, "Hey, buy this thing; it's got all the NES games on it," and you know, obviously that's great from a value perspective, but then we're not having these conversations. Then we're not getting outraged of this wasn't included, this wasn't included, and I think that plays into the buzz of the thing. Like it makes sense to have that list because it just contributes to the hype in the conversation. I think I
love a good conspiracy theory, Ben. There's that, and then there's also Chrono Trigger not being on there. What does that mean? Is there a possible Switch Virtual Console Chrono Trigger something going on? Some kind of remake possibility?
You're reading into it too much, I think. There, one that they released, it is on Virtual Console already, Chrono Trigger, and there was a DS version released. So you do have two alternatives to try and get that. There's nothing to say they won't re-release the DS version at some time, like on a Virtual Console like service. So this, I think, if anything, might. I don't want to speculate, but I've heard rumors at points that has something to do with the licensing of Chrono Trigger and who owns what, because there was a big collaboration between a lot of artists, including Akira Toriyama, which has connections to Toei and their animation studio, which they are notorious for being authoritarian on control issues. So I heard rumors that like they have to be very careful about how they re-release Chrono Trigger. Like they have very little leeway in what platforms. Like they have to all be like either existing, which makes. But I keep wondering how the DS version ever happened. Then like, well, the only like kind of like throws a wrench in the works for that theory is like, how did the DS version come out then? Like 10 years ago, if they weren't allowed to re-release it on any platforms other than existing ones. Anyway,
I wonder if they'll come out with handheld ones of these. Just with preloaded games on it. You know, if they did like a DS re-release or a Game Boy.
They could.
Like a Game Boy one, just classic Game Boy with like preloaded 30 games or something. That'd be really cool.
I would love a Game Boy.
I want to believe in your theory, though, Cooper. I want to believe they're doing something special with Chrono Trigger. It's like, we don't want to re-release it just yet. We're doing something. Yeah. We have something special planned for Chrono.
Yep,
That's what I want to believe.
I agree. That's what I believe.
I still think it could have been put on here, despite that, but like...
I'm all in on conspiracy theories.
I'm the Cooper optimism right
Hell
here.
Yeah.
Well, I think what's so hard about this list of games is, to me, it's like it's almost there. Whereas with the NES Classic, there were quite a few games that, like, substitutions I would have made, a lot of additions I would have put on. With the SNES Classic, for me, personally speaking, in my experience with the SNES, it's almost there, but Chrono Trigger is just so synonymous with the system that not having it on just...
It's a big omission.
It's a big omission.
Big omission.
But there are other things, too, that you're getting into.
Yeah, the other one I would say, they did pick the right Final Fantasy game, because even though I love 4 more, 2... as it's called in North America.
Right.
I would have liked that to be on there as well. Like,
sure.
I think they could have included both, but if they had to pick one, 3, aka 6, is the one that people usually go back to.
And I've never played 6. Like, that's my goal this year is to play through that game, so this is so perfect.
Yeah. 4...
It holds up.
It does hold up. 4 has gotten a lot of love though. It got the DS remake. It's gotten like plenty of ports and re-releases. Got after years treatment.
Yeah, so 4 is especially.
4 has gotten a lot of love. So I'm not too upset about this. There's plenty of ways to play 4. So talking about Omissions. We were talking about this a little bit earlier before we started the show. A lot of fighting games series got their start during this generation, the Super Nintendo, Genesis, and arcade era. We're getting Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Hyper fighting, I think I got that right. But there's some fighting games that were out at the time that are not coming on here. Let's start with Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat 1, 2, or 3. Not one of those is making their way onto the SNES Classic.
I don't want to be that guy, but inferior version, especially the original Mortal Kombat
with the lack of blood.
Yeah.
What if Nintendo and NetherRealm and WB, now that they own it all, what if they'd taken this moment to put out a blood version of more like? Imagine that headline: SNES Classic releases the official version of Mortal Kombat for Super Nintendo with blood re-added.
Awesome!
Like,
that would have been really good.
But even that they could have put
awesome.
Mortal Kombat 2 on there, which had all the blood and fatalities. I find that a little interesting.
My first question when the lineup came out was, is Final Fight on there?
Oh,
because that's a big Super Nintendo game. Synonymous to me with Super Nintendo. One of the big ones is Final Fight. I think that's
there's a disturbing lack of
and
brawlers,
especially you talk about 21 games. Final Fight. Just toss that on there. Just a quick little beat 'em up.
And no Final Fight, no Turtles or Teenage
Yeah,
Turtles.
that was one that was
Turtles in Time.
Yeah, Turtles in Time was one that jumped out. Yeah.
Oh my god,
Absolutely.
Those two are huge.
I don't know. I guess that might be a. When was
I would take. I love Final Fight, and I would take
Turtles in Time for sure. That's a big loss.
Definitely like no Fatal Fury.
Yep, no Fatal Fury
on there
for sure.
This one is, I think it's obvious the reason why it's not on here, but there's no Killer Instinct, which was a huge game for Super Nintendo. Obviously, that is a rare game, and IP resides with Microsoft now. They're doing their own thing with Killer Instinct. I'm sure they'll just be like, yeah, sure, Nintendo, put it on your SNES Classic, but we're gonna do HD Killer Instinct, another one. We're gonna put an HD remake of Killer Instinct again.
You know what else I could have gone for, Damiani? Sunset Riders.
Sunset Riders would have been such a cool, unexpected, like, I can't believe this is on their pick.
Especially like Western theming, you got Red Dead coming up. It's like Westworld. Westerns are hot right now.
Terra Enigma was another one that I still suggested that I've always wanted to play, but have never.
Terra Enigma, Illusion of Gaia, not on there.
Lufia 2.
Not a game that should be on there, but a Super Nintendo game that I don't know if it's available anywhere. Maybe you guys can help me out. Maximum Carnage.
I know what you're talking about.
Yep.
The red cartridge.
The beat 'em up.
Yeah.
Is that on Virtual Console or anything?
Not that I'm
That seems like
aware
a
of.
hidden gem out there that's like hard to
Game.
find.
I got rid of it.
One of my neighbors had it.
My uncle sent me that for a birthday along with Shaq Fu.
Dude.
Which is also not on here.
It's... Yeah, now that we're actually going through the list, it's like, oh man, there could be a lot. I am grateful for what's on there, and it's just there are like a
there's
couple...
There's always going to be holes.
There are a couple of inclusions, though, when you're so tight for space that I think are a little bit frustrating. The one that jumps out to me, and I really like this game. It's a fun game, and I would love to play it with the allies because it is good, but there's another Kirby game already on there. And so the inclusion of Kirby's Dream Course, I feel like there are some maybe just a couple of higher priorities things that I would swap in for that.
There's two things. One game and one like add-on thing that wasn't included at all in this. First, Pilot Wings.
Yeah,
since that is a Nintendo series. They had Pilot Wings 64. They continued on with 3DS. And
I really like
the theme has been like used like Wii Sports and Resort. Like it's kind of crossed over with that, and it's in Smash Brothers. That was the Genesis. That was the first one. It's so different from the rest of them. This would have been a good point to be like, hey, you know this Pilot Wings games you might be playing nowadays? Here's the origin of it.
Is that on Virtual Console somewhere?
Yeah, it's on Virtual
Console. Dude, let's
do
Pilot Wings, guys.
Pilot Wings is
I secretly play that like every so often on stream.
Yeah.
Okay.
I literally just played it like last week on stream. Sick. The final mission. I was trying some cheese strats on the final. Like it's a rescue mission. The final. It's not even like it's all training courses. But after you complete each set of 4, you go into like a military helicopter and you gotta like infiltrate this military base. Like with it's like. You got missiles and stuff. You gotta take out like the anti-air rockets and stuff going across this like military map. And you gotta like land at the rescue like helipad and like
that sounds so good.
It's hilarious. It's like Top Gun of helicopters right there. That one hurts a little bit. And I was thinking this as we were talking. I cannot believe I did not think about this till any point until like 2 minutes ago. There is nothing about the Bandai Satellaview stuff on here whatsoever, even in the Japanese version.
You're not speaking my language.
BS
I don't even
Zelda.
know what that is.
The BS Zelda. Bandai Satellaview was an add-on for the Super Famicom in Japan.
Okay.
And it was a subscription-based service through satellite. It was called like Saint Giga Television because they did satellite television. Here they had something similar with like Sega had a service like that here in the 90s and it was short-lived.
Sega TV or something, was it? Or?
I forget what it was. My neighbor had it. I don't know enough about Sega like history to remember this, and I apologize to all the Sega fans out there.
Was it Sega TV? Was it Sega Channel?
Sega Channel? That sounds so
Corrections,
familiar.
you'll let us know for sure, definitely.
I think it... Okay.
So the subscription service every week would beam you a new signal for games to update. So they'd be one of them was BS Zelda. And they did the original one where they'd beam new maps to you, like new quest maps. One of them had like day-night cycles.
This is crazy.
Then they did like this, a link to the
what?
But then they did a link to the past where you played as the mascots, and it was like a sequel to a Link to the Past where Link had left and Ganon was gonna come back and like had new dungeons.
Who would
and
make
everything.
that? Nintendo?
Yeah. Nintendo.
That is blowing my mind,
So
Damiani.
this was
what?
when we talked about Star Fox 2, this would have been a chance for them to officially release these games on there, like that were only previously available as limited time downloads. Fans have done their best to recompile them and put them together into unofficial ROMs so you can, as close to possible, play through some of those.
I'm gonna get this question out. Do we think there's a possibility for a Super Nintendo Mini Classic Volume 2? A Volume 2 with some other holes, some other, you save some of those big hitters, you save Chrono Trigger, you save Turtles.
I don't think so.
You save this crazy Netflix in the 90s.
I think what Damiani was saying, though, is that the problems that they were facing getting some games on this first version would still exist. So I don't know if I just think, like, dealing with the licensing for Turtles or for Chrono Trigger.
Also, I think if anyone's going to get one, you would see NES Classic Volume 2 would be the first one over this. I think the problem is like consumers gonna be like, wait, I'm buying the same thing again, like the same looking system, like unless they do like the top loader version of the NES, like NES Classic Volume 2, but it's a top loader looking one. I could see that getting away, and Super Nintendo did have a second version. They could do that. But I still feel it's a little bit of a stretch because you're trying to convince people to buy another little unit that they already bought for the purpose of playing those games. They're going to ask, why couldn't you just release more games on it? Like that's going to get asked by the average person at that point.
But at the same time, it would also help that people, if they weren't able to get the first one, they would get another chance or something.
Like it would include all the old ones? Or
just they get another chance to maybe get one of them, and that kind of like changes the discussion online of like, there's a lot of people complaining that, why didn't you just include this in the one I already got? But then there would be that camp of, now's my chance to maybe get another one. So it would kind of like...
I have to wonder if Nintendo is seeing the value in sort of bundling these classic games together and then throwing in something like a Star Fox 2 and seeing that response. Because I think my biggest hope, if and when the Switch Virtual Console ever comes out, like... I think it's really cool that on Wii U they said, hey, here's Mother 1, you've never gotten that before, here it is. That's awesome just on its own, but I think maybe it would be even more effective to have like, okay, this month on Switch, we're having a bundle of games, here's stuff that you know and love already, but here's also like this weird little one. Now we're bringing it to you, like here's Mother 3 and a bunch of other games, so maybe people that wouldn't be interested in Mother 3 on its own would be interested in the others, and they buy that bundle, and then you'd increase that fame. I don't know. There's something about a rush of games all at once, as opposed to the painfully slow drip of Virtual Console that we get now.
For sure.
Yeah.
Or have gotten in the past.
That's really the appeal with these, too. And, obviously the original controllers they come with, the HDMI, just the ease of access. It's so much more.
It's the presentation. It feels like an event.
Yeah. Like I would show parents or family or people that don't game, be like, check this out, the NES or the Super Nintendo Mini, because they see it, they recognize it, rather than be like, hey, check out like these Virtual Console games through this device. Like, what is that? There's just something about the branding and the visuals.
I'll go on the eShop on either the Wii U or the 3DS, and I'll like be looking through Virtual Consoles and be like, oh, that came out? Like, that's awesome. I want it. I wish I would have known about it beforehand. They just kind of get stealth dropped there sometimes.
This definitely gets you more excited the way they do it like this. You got a point with that.
What was that satellite thing called?
Bandai Satellaview.
So insane.
The prefix was BSX.
Did you have to pay for a subscription?
I believe. I don't remember what the prices were.
Like a mail order? You send them a check?
No, it was. I forget how they did it, but I believe it was a monthly fee. I'm trying to remember. I was looking at it recently because I always go back and have to check in on it, like for research stuff every now and then.
Crazy, Damiani.
Didn't the Famicom the details on this are very hazy. Didn't the Famicom have something like that as well? Maybe it wasn't satellite, but I think you could take your cartridges.
Oh yeah. So the original Famicom disc system, cause the FDS, it wasn't cartridges. It was the yellow disc.
Yeah.
So they had kiosk where you could, because they had add-on, they had peripherals, they had a keyboard and this programmable cartridge that you can put cartridges on. You basically could do programming on it. Because the early time, these were viewed as more of computer machines than just game systems. So they wanted people to be able to code stuff. That's actually how we were able to do a lot of the tricks and the access all the glitch levels in Super Mario Brothers, like in the Famicom version. But there used to be a warning on in the cases for the Famicom disc when you went to the kiosk at the stores. Be careful not to overwrite your game. Because you could destroy your game on there. So that you could go to game stores and get stuff put onto a disc and come back and play that new stuff. But there was always the potential of overwriting an existing cart. So they had warning labels on the disc saying this is already a game, don't erase me and stuff, because they were read write, so you could overwrite them. Jeez. Which is hilarious at the time. So cool. that was the time. But then they made cartridges you can't erase these like that. Yeah. You're cool. But the comparison between this an event, having them all together bundled, versus trying to you sometimes might even know it came out on a Virtual Console. This was also a lot of our patrons submitted this type of question about: is this the release of the SNES Classic coming later this year, combined with the NES Classic late last year? Is this the reason why we have no concrete information on a Virtual Console or the Virtual Console Netflix service on Switch? Is this why they're being beating around the bush and trying not to say anything, especially before now? Because they're they would have to confirm the existence of the SNES. We have the answer they should have given to make things clear would have been up through today. So especially at E3 when people asked, "Where's the Virtual Console?" and Reggie, where's this Netflix service you alluded to in that report you put out like a week or two ago? You just be like, oh, well, we have SNES Classic coming out later this year.
Right.
We really don't want to have like those two things competing with each other, and we just had NES Classic, so we want to wait till it's run its course at the end of the year, and then next year we'll be introducing virtual console services to the Switch. This is why. This is all planned in advance. Mm-hmm. But what's your response to that? Do you think that was very well planned out? Like, is this maybe if that is the reason, is that a bad move?
No,
like,
I think it's fine. The lack of communication is frustrating, but I think the new games coming out on Switch are counteracting the lack of virtual console. I think in a full year of the Nintendo Switch launching, getting Legend of Zelda, getting Super Mario, getting other games. That kind of takes the sting away from the ability to play Nintendo and Super Nintendo games, especially considering that the NES Classic has been out. Super Nintendo is coming out. So I see both. I see the corporate angle of it. Like, okay, we're catering to the old school virtual console games here with the Super Nintendo. Mm-hmm. We have the new Switch games over here, not competing with each other directly. Because you put Virtual Console out on Switch, maybe they're thinking, oh well, then people don't want the Super Nintendo as much. Some people don't really, some people on the Switch will be like, oh, I have all these games I can just buy on Virtual Console. I don't really need to buy Mario Kart immediately because I can, have these other classic games.
It is a little bit frustrating, though. You talked about that lack of communication because, to me, the thing that's most exciting about the Switch is here's this system that you can take with you on the go and anywhere. It's like, hey, while I'm on the bus, I can play Breath of the Wild. That's crazy. That's insane. There's a lot of value there already, but I think there are just so many things that feel extremely obvious with the Switch that don't take a lot of thought put in them. Like, imagine if you could play those games and you could just pop open Super Mario World for a little bit. It just seems with the form factor of that system and that being a major selling point, like this virtual console would even have more value than it already does. And you see that already. I think people are responding to those Neo Geo releases in a bigger way than they would just because of what the Switch is.
But you look at the fever for the Super Nintendo, and I feel like this helps that. It helps the fever.
You think it's just fanning those flames?
Yeah, by not having it on the Switch, by not being able to download some of those games.
So you're saying that this is like a setup?
Yes.
Where you come out with the Super Nintendo, you create the flames.
Because people want it even more now. We're so hungry for the Super Nintendo. The hunger is real.
But for you personally, and I know I just argued about the form factor of the Switch, but like, let's say you get your hands on an SNES Classic, and they're like, and we're coming out with Super Mario World on the Switch in February, let's just say hypothetically. Does that dilute it at all for you, knowing that you just kind of bought in?
No, because again, the ease, like, I'm buying the Super Nintendo for home play.
I see.
So
I don't need that. It's the form.
Like Final Fantasy VI, that's a game where beautifully, or Super Mario RPG, a lot of these games on here, I can just sit down in my house and really commit time to them. There's obviously a couple games that would be great on Switch Portable, but I could maybe just buy those like piecemeal,
Yeah, I mean, I guess what you just said gets me thinking about it a lot. First thing is that, like, even if they want this to be the setup, why... This is only it's Super Nintendo and NES stuff. Like, NES Classic you can't get anymore. So I don't understand why NES games aren't on virtual console service now that you can't get it. It was
just because it not existing at all is helping that
I wonder how much frustration this is doing, because not everyone's going to be able to get a Super Nintendo Classic. Yes, it's going to create demand for it. I would be more inclined to believe the theory if it, like, once the 2018 hits, production runs over, they announce, okay, virtual console services are coming. By the way, here is a NES Classic and SNES Classic library bundle where you can get the games that are included with both of those for one low price to start as a starter thing or whatever. Or
that seems great.
Like something like that. Like, I can see, like, kind of tie in to, like, ease, like, the pain. Another cool thing they could have done.
But does that burn the people that so feverishly... Go ahead.
Kind of, but I think as they get those controllers, maybe?
So, yes. The controllers... I don't actually know if they work. Does the Wii remote work with the Switch right now? I forget.
Does the Wii remote work with the Switch?
No. Yeah, that is a definite hard no. It does work. The NES Classic and Super Nintendo Classic controllers will work on your Wii and Wii U Virtual Console service, though. So they do have multiple functionality there. What I was going to get at is people who already bought the systems, the classics.
Yes.
What if, because they're USB powered, it would be amazing if there was some way to have them be able, if they had, it's obviously a no, but if they had forward thinking to realize that it could have some connectivity to the Switch. So when they release all the future games, if you can connect your NES Classic or Super Nintendo Classic when it's docked to the dock station, you could play them through the SNES Classic or something while they're docked or something. So you get to use the original controller system and the interface like that, like the Switch.
And plugging in would like unlock the digital version. And
so it's so the NES Classic and SNES Classic don't need any online functionality. It just communicates with the Switch. There's some encrypted communications, and then it allows it to play those games on there, but only when you connect to the Switch. When you disconnect from the Switch, those games are no longer on those systems. Like this is a temporary flash memory read.
Yeah.
But then on the Switch, you can take them on the go with you and play them with the Switch. When you're home, you get that nice. I get to play on this. I can play on my Super NES.
Wait, but you're saying it has to constantly be connected to the Switch
at home to play it on the classic, on the mini, on any of the mini systems, as like a safety protocol. Like
I see,
because I can see them. They don't want you to add more games to those. So that's the thing. It doesn't. Maybe it could just be tethered to the Switch somehow, wirelessly or something. So you could bring your Switch and NES Classic. Like I'm at home, I bring it to Jones's. I have that expanded library available right then and there, and we can use SNES Mini Classic controllers instead of holding. Each of us needs a virtual console to play like whatever Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter multiplayer. But they're obviously not doing something like that. That would have been a cool idea. But with going with all this stuff, like I feel like Nintendo is this. They are really rolling the dice, and they're just like cleaning house right now. Is what I feel like. I think they're gambling a lot with a lot of their decisions they're making, and it has been paying off for them, and I think they're just going to keep riding it. So yes, what they're doing with SNES Classic and not talking about Virtual Console, like this was what is hot right now. We introduce anything else right now, it can mess that up.
Yeah,
like we know people aren't happy, but like we've shown time and time again, as we talked about at the beginning of this episode. Fans will put up with it. Yeah, we'll bitch and moan.
Yeah.
But then we'll get to a point like, oh, finally we get a thing. We're happy. Oh, yay. It's great.
I think that's what's so infuriating, though. That's really it, is they absolutely do not have to do any more than they're doing. They have people that are a lot of people that are very clearly willing to put up with it, us included. I think that's what burns me so much is that this better communication, like I was, and you were, and many people were. I saw it all over the internet, just wondering, like, "Hey, are pre-orders going up? Is it in stock there? I see it's listed there." It's just chaos right now, and I think if they would go out of their way to give us some sort of schedule, to be clear, to give us numbers, to let us know when things are happening, like they don't have to. People are going to put up with it, but I would have.
Acknowledge us.
Yeah, acknowledge us, and I'd be that you already have so much goodwill. Why not treat these people that are willing to put up with it better? Like you're Nintendo, you can do this. Come on.
Like, and I actually have zero sympathy for what they're doing with the no communication thing, and any excuse they give is 100% bullshit.
Yep.
Because there are other high demand, highly coveted things in the world, ticket sales, event sales like that
Phones.
People will announce pre-orders for like the new concert tickets will start on this date. Movie pre-order tickets for episode 8 will start. Everyone always gives you at least a start date. They won't. Sometimes they can't give you the quantity. They don't know. Sometimes they do. But virtually every freaking medium out there that does sales of some kind of limited stuff will tell you when the damn thing begins, except for Nintendo. Yeah. And then they blame it on they say every time, oh, Amazon, Best Buy, GameStop, it's up to them to announce. It's like, and then but other things they announce perfectly on time. It's clearly something is going on with you, Nintendo. Like you're causing this. Like, I don't like that. I really think at the very least Nintendo should be like, hey, NES Classic press release. Guess what? On Friday, July 1st or next Friday, whatever, July 7th or 8th or whatever that is, we will be taking all the stores will start taking pre-orders at like 3 p.m. Pacific time or something. Just say that. Instead of keeping people up at night like, oh, tonight's the night, it's going to start every hour. Like, you're just like putting people through like unnecessary crap at that point. And like it's infuriating to the average person of like, when did it start? Like, you're like, did I miss it? Is it sold out? I see the pages, it says unavailable. It's like, there's just no communication. Not even saying they haven't even begun yet. Like, they even say pre-orders will begin at a later date. It's like, just nothing whatsoever from them. They got to do something. They got to do better than that. I want them to do better.
Me too.
It's infuriating because it's like some sort of magic spell that works every time. Yeah. Where, like, the more removed you are from Nintendo, the easier it is to be angry. But when you're in there, when you're in the moment, when you're playing Super Mario Odyssey for the first time, it's all washed away.
Yep, they know. It's like Disney. It's the same as Disney.
Sure.
Like Disney merchandise, Disneyland, Disney tickets. It's like people will put up with it. Right. They have us.
What they have is so powerful, clearly, and like
you can't
even argue it because time and time again, history just keeps proving that.
Yep. It's like sports, I think of the Dodgers, and it's just like, as long as people keep showing up to the stadium, parking's going to be $20. It's like...
It's a good thing. And talking about things that aren't Nintendo doing the same thing, this will be our last question that was submitted by multiple users as well. So this is the third most requested question of us to talk about. Obviously, Nintendo's doing this now. How do you feel about if Sony were to do a PlayStation Classic Mini or Sega to do a Genesis Mini Classic? Like, what do you want to see? What other company would you like to see do this?
Dude.
What do you want on it? And do you think it'll be as successful?
I only want one thing. Just one.
I want many.
Dreamcast Mini.
Oh, that's the one to do. That's the one to do. You nailed it.
That's the one.
You nailed it.
Mini.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the one to do.
Just print money on that thing.
Because I was going to say that the thing about the Genesis that's weird to me is they did have the Sonic Ultimate Genesis collection that came out last generation, and that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
It has a lot on there.
Yeah, for sure.
And like even the extra things that they include, like it's a pretty comprehensive collection. And I mean, I don't know. I guess in some way I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to it, but that's what you're competing against already. And so it'd be hard. But a Dreamcast collection you could knock it out of the park. Yes. A PlayStation collection I'd be way into.
For sure. A lot of those games are on like Vita and PS3. A lot of them haven't made it to PS4.
Having that mini
and having the mini.
Having the mini PlayStation. And what I would love for them to do is, the screen that you could put on the PS1? Like, that's what you do with the PS1 Mini, is you bring back that model of PS1, that sleek, awesome-looking system. You flip that screen up.
I played Resident Evil in the back of my Spanish class.
What?
Ask Brad, he remembers. And keyboarding class.
Keyboarding class. So you just had it in your backpack? And you just...
Yeah, like I would put my backpack, like in Spanish, I had it in the very back. The wall.
I don't remember how quiet that thing was, though. Like, didn't they hear like the disc spinning or anything at all? Like, it worked out.
It worked out. Like, my Spanish teacher was pretty chill, so there was a lot of time. And keyboarding as well. It was classes where just get your work done type of thing. You have this hour to get your work done. And
that is awesome.
Somehow.
One cool thing about the PlayStation Mini Classic, if they did do it, all these, you said they're on Vita, virtual, like, or
and PSN. PS4 does the super awesome thing, the conversions where they like up-res it and add trophies like PS2 to PS4. Right. There's not a lot of those.
But none of them do the full opening. Because they do part of the PlayStation opening. They can't do the full one because part of it was the PS1 system open and the software open.
Right.
So you can have the full thing again on that one. The real version. Oh, yeah.
I think what's
the
tough
boot up.
You think they'll do PC Mini, like a little mini?
Oh, God.
I think what's tough about a PS1 curated list, though, and would really make a lot of people upset, is there are games like RPGs that we're frustrated that aren't on the Super Nintendo. That goes deep.
Dude, PS1 and PS2, no matter what, people are pissed because games are not on there.
Like if you just put Final Fantasy VII on that thing, that's enough. Where's Vagrant Story?
But then people are going to be like, where's Final Fantasy 8 and 9 and
Right. And
so many games.
I think more so than other systems at that point, you really have like entire series you start to see on the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2.
You'd have to put Tactics on there.
You'd have to put Tactics on there, right?
And if you're putting 7 in Tactics, you gotta
could
put 8
make
and 9.
a square PS1 Mini. That's what you could do.
Yeah,
you could just make it
classic Square
classic video games. Yeah,
Square can just do that right now. Yep. Let's do that. That would be a killer library to debate over for that one.
Yeah.
Something makes me think Sony would like make that expandable though. Like they'd make let you share your titles.
Memory cards.
Sure.
You buy a PS1 memory card or something, and the memory card is the thing that has a bunch of games on it, and you just like swap them in and out.
That'd be cool. I think they'll because your purchases carry over between accounts and stuff. They would let you like knock my water bottle over and they'd let you carry your games over to that possibly. Like, hey, it comes with these 30 games already preloaded on there, but should you want more games, you can just go buy them off there. I see Sony being more
the store is
open,
like on it,
open to that type of thing, to doing that. Some other systems, I just because I always say like I never got to play these games and they're super expensive, and want to be amazing for engineers to finally have another crack at
I know
seeing how to
going.
emulate. Yep, Saturn Classic.
Yeah,
like having those games at an affordable price finally in one place. And then letting like console engineers who do work on emulation just tearing that thing open and looking how they did it. Like, oh, now we can make proper Saturn emulators, possibly.
Would it come with the GunCon and Virtua Cop? Because that's a deal breaker.
For you? Yes.
Okay.
The guns will have to be sold separately, but they will include Virtual Cop.
Excellent.
Definitely will be on there.
They had a very cool disc on Dreamcast that was like I think it was called Smash Pack. It was a mix of like Genesis stuff. They had Virtua Cop on there as well. It was cool.
Where would you say the cutoff is? Because I think it would sell well, but I don't know if it's necessary. Like a PS2 Mini or Classic, I think that would sell well. With how many things are getting HD remasters and ports from that era on, I don't know if that like is necessary.
Is the PS2 necessary? Yeah.
Like Ben, you were talking about like that. There's the Super Nintendo era, and that was like more of a time period so you can get into that type of thing versus N64. Like how recent is too recent for them to do something like this?
Well, yeah, again, talking about that perception of value, right? People are getting excited about paying, what, $20, $25 for a PS2 game on PS4, where I think we would scoff.
15. The PS2 games?
No, I think like Star Ocean Till the End of Time was like 25.
Wasn't that the Square Enix tax, though?
It might be a Square Enix tax.
Because like GTA is like 15.
I'm just saying, for Virtual Console with Super Nintendo games, I think 10 is like the upper limit that we're willing to pay.
Yeah.
And so if I was Sony, why not just slowly drip out these games at a higher price point rather than bundling them all together?
Hey, Ben.
Yeah.
The PS1 Classic, just thought of something. Wasn't there an important Persona game that came out that never came out over here?
Yeah. Well, no, it did come out over here, so you're thinking of Innocent Sin. So Persona 2 is 2 parts. It's Innocent Sin and then Eternal Punishment. But the thing is Innocent Sin, we only got the re-release that came out on PSP, which, it'd be nice. Because Eternal Punishment, we got it on PS1. We got, like, the second part of that. They did come out with that on PSN as well, so you can download it and play it on.
Think of some Tales games.
Yeah.
Put on that PS1 Classic.
Siphon Filter. Throw it on there.
I think you're right though, Ben. Like your thing about the perception of value. If Sony were to put enough games on that PS2 Mini, if you did the math, it's like okay, for like $70-$80, I'm getting 30. These great. I'm getting Grand Theft Auto 3 and
Vice City,
San Andreas. I'm getting Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3.
Yeah.
I'm getting
Final Fantasy
10 and 12.
12.
Trying to think of it like wow.
You're getting God of War.
God of War
1 and 2.
I really think
you're getting Devil May Cry,
If
Ratchet and Clank.
When you sit down and think of it, like
the
PS2 Classic,
Onimusha.
Like there's no way you could limit that to 21 games. No. It couldn't be done.
100 games.
Yeah.
100 games minimum.
Like, way too many. You're getting Gran Turismo 3.
Oh,
if you don't have GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, that thing is fraudulent.
Yeah.
That's gonna have. You know what? I take it back. I think PS2 Mini. Once we get 2020 and
once we get to like PS5, you know.
Once PS5 lands, then it's like it's the opportune moment.
There is something, I'd be so on board with it though. There is something insanely appealing about having an OG model PS2 in like a squat form, like a little cute small form.
Yeah.
Oh, that would look so good in that tower.
It's good stuff. Any other ones? I can't think of anything else. I would not want a think of all the offshoot systems like CDI. 3.0. None of those.
I think TurboGrafx. I think I'd be in for. Also Neo Geo, which they've already kind of done.
Did something like that.
Yeah.
TurboGrafx would be
Neo Geo
a
Pocket.
good PC graphics system.
Even Sega CD, I like only want 1 or 2 games.
That's what I was thinking with Sega
Yeah.
CD. With like you could probably
like Snatcher,
do.
I want.
You could probably do a.
You know, but again, like an entire Sega CD, I can't even think of like 10 games.
What if?
Classic.
What if you did like a Sega Classic? So you do Master System, Genesis, 32X, Sega CD, Saturn, and Dreamcast.
What would the form factor of the system look like? Would it be all?
It would be like, here's the abomination that you always joke about.
That's a joke.
Here it is. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
That's exactly what it is.
That might be. I would like that.
Everything
they're all thrown
is
together, but like behind this giant whatever it is Robotnik, just like this.
Yes.
Just a statue of him.
They create lore around it.
Oh my god.
This is my latest creation.
Before we wrap it up, any like handheld stuff?
Yeah.
Any of
I think
that?
a Game Boy or Game Boy Color would
Holding in
be
your hand, taking with you like a mini Game Boy again.
so cool.
There's no way that's not an immediate success if you come out with something that looks like an original Game Boy and say like done.
It's like
Knocked it
30
out of the
games
park.
on it.
Original Game Boy. Iconic. People have like the original Game Boy like phone cases. Like that design is still out there.
I mean, the Genesis was my first system, but I think some part of me has the most love for the Game Boy. Like I took that thing with me everywhere. Everywhere. Oh man.
Some goodies on there.
Some goodies. Like it was at a time there were a lot of games that came out on the Game Boy where you had comparative versions on consoles, but it was blissful ignorance because I didn't have access to the console games. So I just appreciated what came my way, and it was all video games. It was all gravy, man. It was all gravy. I wish, because now, right? Now you can't. Now the burden of knowledge.
The
right?
burden.
You want the one that has the best frame rate.
Too much information.
Too much information.
Too many trailers.
Right. Waxing nostalgic pretty hard this episode.
Wow.
That's what it's all about. That's what they're playing on.
That's definitely the point. I want to thank everyone for sending in their questions.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the 3 most common themes we got. So sorry for no individual shout outs, but like of the like 60 questions sent to us, like 45 of them were regarding those 3 specific things. So, and they needed to be covered. So thank you again for all of those. Thank you for keeping on topic this time. And to the person who didn't get the Final Fantasy 3 verse 6 thing, don't worry. Like, we've all done it at one point. It's totally cool. Like, it's all Square Enix's fault, not your fault on the numbering system. I want to thank you both for being on Friend Code for your first time.
Yeah.
It was an absolute blast.
Had a blast.
Huber's
Jazzed.
optimism and conspiracy theories.
This was a lot of fun.
Jazzed.
For sure.
Funny stuff. Good stuff. And if you don't know who we are Easy Allies. You can find us over at patreon.com/easyallies. It's through your generous support that we were able to make this show and other shows that you can find on youtube.com/easyallies. If you just want to go to our website, easyallies.com, you can find all that information, including our streaming schedule as well. And then again, for Last Call, which is the segment where we do user questions for the show, it's for $5 and above, $5 and above patrons, sorry. And we will be figuring out what the next episode subject is about, and I will make that post when we determine that. So look out for that, for submitting your questions for that. And that's pretty much it. Any final thoughts or anything?
Good luck out there on the Super Nintendo pre-orders.
Have they started in the time we've recorded?
Right.
Did we miss them?
How many of the allies will get one, I wonder?
Yeah, we should make that.
I'm going to buy as many as I can.
As many as we can. We're looking out for each other this time.
Yeah.
We're going to try and get 9. But anyway, thank you for watching, and see you all next time on Friend Code.